She stopped telling you things. Not all at once, gradually. The conversations got shorter, the details got fewer. And at some point, you realized you had no real idea what was going on inside her world anymore. But she was still right there, still smiling, still saying everything was fine. That is not a woman who is fine. That is a woman who decided, quietly and without ceremony, that it was no longer safe to be fully real with you. And she made that decision so slowly, across so many small moments, that you never even noticed it happening. And here is the part that will stay with you. She probably never told you she made it. She just moved something inside herself, closed a door, and kept showing up as if nothing had shifted. This is what most men never learn. Not the obvious things about what women want or how they think. Something deeper, something that lives underneath all of that. And if what I just described feels familiar in any way, then the next few minutes are going to explain a lot about things that have confused you for a long time. Stay with me because this builds. And the part most people miss is not at the beginning. If you are not subscribed yet, take a second and do that now. We break down human behavior and psychology in a way that actually changes how you see the people around you. Hit the bell so you do not miss what comes next. Now let us get into this. Most men approach women the way they approach a problem they cannot solve. They analyze behavior. They replay conversations looking for the moment it went wrong. They try to decode signals. They ask friends. They read things online. All of it is an attempt to find the logic underneath the confusion. But here is what no one tells them. Women are not a logic problem. They are an emotional experience. And you cannot think your way into understanding an emotional experience. You have to learn to feel your way through it. And for most men, that is territory they were never given a map for. There is something real and documented happening inside the female brain that changes everything once you understand it. Research in neuroscience has consistently shown that women show significantly more activity in the areas of the brain associated with emotional memory, emotional anticipation, and the reading of social and relational cues. What this means in everyday life is not a small thing. It means that a woman in a conversation with you is receiving an entirely different level of information than you probably realize. She is tracking your tone and what it changed to when she brought up something sensitive. She is registering the pause before you answered. She is feeling whether your attention is fully here or split somewhere else. She is noticing what you did not say just as much as what you did. And she is filing all of it not as facts, but as feelings. Because for her, the feeling was the experience. Not a side effect of it, the actual experience. This is why she can bring up something from 6 months ago with total emotional precision, while you barely remember it happened. It is not because she is keeping score to use against you. It is because emotional events are stored in her memory with full sensory detail attached. The moment lives inside her, the way a song can take you back to a specific afternoon 20 years ago. The feeling is encoded. It does not fade the way a fact does. So the history you think you are building together and the history she is actually living inside are not the same thing. You are building a record of events, She is building a record of how those events made her feel. And that record is what shapes everything. How open she becomes with you over time. How much of herself she brings into the room. How safe she feels to be difficult, to be vulnerable, to be real. This matters more than almost anything else. And most men have no idea it is even happening. Now let us talk about something a researcher named John Gottman discovered after spending decades studying couples in a controlled laboratory setting. What he found fundamentally changed how psychologists think about why relationships succeed or fall apart. He discovered that relationships do not usually end because of big fights or dramatic betrayals. They end because of what he called emotional bids. A bid is any small moment when one person reaches out to another for connection. It could be her pointing at something out the window, mentioning something that frustrated her at work, going quiet in a way that is quietly asking to be noticed. These are not grand declarations. They are ordinary, almost invisible moments, and they happen constantly. In every one of those moments, the other person makes a choice. They can turn toward the bid, which just means being present and acknowledging it. They can turn away, which usually looks like distraction, an absent eyes on the phone. Or they can turn against it, which is irritation or dismissal. And here is what the data showed. Couples who stayed together and reported deep satisfaction turned toward each other's bids around 86% of the time. Couples who eventually separated turned toward each other only 33% of the time. The relationship did not die in one dramatic moment. It died across thousands of ordinary moments where one person reached out and the other was not really there. Let that land for a second. Most men are focused entirely on the big moments, the dates, the gestures, the occasions. And those things matter. But they cannot compensate for consistently missing the small ones. Because she is not just experiencing the highlight reel of the relationship. She is living inside the texture of every ordinary day with you. And if that texture feels like absence, the big moments start to feel like performance rather than connection. This is one of the most important things you can understand about how relationships actually work. And most people never hear it put this plainly. Now here is something that causes more confusion between men and women than almost anything else. And once you see what is actually happening, you will never approach it the same way again. She says she is fine. She is clearly not fine. Most men at this point feel a combination of frustration and helplessness. They offered to talk. She said she did not want to talk. They gave her space. She seemed more distant. They asked again. She said nothing was wrong. They are now standing in the middle of an invisible conflict with no idea how it started or what it is actually about. But here is the truth of what is happening in that moment. She is almost never being deliberately deceptive. What she is doing is something far more nuanced. She is running an emotional assessment in real time. She is asking, underneath the words, whether this is actually a safe space to be honest, whether you will hear her or get defensive, whether bringing it up will cost her more than staying quiet, whether you will notice something is wrong without her having to prove it to you and perform her own distress to get a reaction. This is a learned response. Most women have had the experience of being honest about how they feel and having that honesty minimized, dismissed, or turned into an argument about whether they were justified in feeling it at all. The emotional nervous system, which is always scanning for safety, eventually learns to protect itself. It tests the water before diving in. So I'm fine is often not a statement. It is a question. It is, I want to be honest, but I need to know it is safe first. Show me something without me having to ask for it. And the response that actually works is not pushing harder, and it is not backing away either. It is something most men have never been taught to do. You stay close without demanding anything. You simply say something true. Something like, I can see something is going on. I am right here. Whenever you are ready, I am not going anywhere. And then you mean it, not as a line, not as a technique. Because here is the thing that changes everything about this moment. She will feel the difference between a man who says that because he read it somewhere and a man who says it because he genuinely means it. Women are extraordinarily attuned to the energy behind words. The content of the sentence and the intention underneath it are two separate signals. And she is reading both simultaneously. This brings us to something that might be the most important thing in this entire video. You can say the right words and still lose her. You can do everything that is technically correct, hit every mark, use the right tone, check all the boxes, and if there is no genuine presence behind it, she will feel the emptiness of it. Not necessarily consciously, but in her body, in the way something in her slightly closes rather than opens. This is why so much advice about women fails the men who try it. It treats the whole thing like a performance. Like if you get the lines right, the scene plays out the way you want. But women are not responding to your performance. They are responding to your presence. They are asking, on a frequency that operates below conscious awareness, something like, is this real? Is he actually here? Does he actually see me? Or does he see the version of me he needs me to be? A man who is genuinely present, genuinely comfortable in himself, without needing her constant approval to feel okay, genuinely curious about who she is rather than who he wants her to be. That man is rarer than most people realize. And when women encounter that quality, they feel something they often cannot quite put into words. It is not chemistry in the romantic movie sense. It is what happens when emotional safety meets real authenticity. And that combination is quietly one of the most magnetic things in human experience. Here is the part that tends to surprise people, and it is where this all connects. The men who have the most genuine ease and depth in their relationships with women are almost never the men who have spent the most time thinking about women. They are the men who have spent the most time honestly working on themselves. A man who is uncomfortable with his own emotional world will always find the emotional world of a woman confusing or threatening. He will deflect without knowing he is deflecting. He will interpret her silence as drama rather than signal. He will offer solutions when what she needed was to feel heard. Because sitting with someone's pain without trying to fix it requires a tolerance for emotional discomfort that he was never taught to develop. He might stay in the relationship. He might even be a good partner by many external measures. But there will be a depth she reaches toward that he cannot quite meet. Not because he does not care, but because he does not have access to it yet inside himself. And she will feel that limit, not as a verdict on him, but as a kind of invisible ceiling on how real the connection can get. And over time, she will quietly stop reaching for what keeps not being there. The men who break through this are not the ones who mastered some formula for understanding women. They are the ones who got honest with themselves first, who got curious about their own interior world instead of treating it like dangerous territory, who learned the difference between suppressing a feeling and actually moving through it, who discovered that real vulnerability, offered from a place of groundedness rather than desperation, does not make them look weak. It makes the woman across from them feel safe enough to be fully real in return. And when a woman feels genuinely safe to be her full self around you, something shifts in the relationship that is almost impossible to describe from the outside. She stops managing herself around you. She stops monitoring your reactions and editing herself before she speaks. She stops protecting the most honest parts of who she is. She opens. And that quality of closeness, that level of actual depth, is what most people spend years and sometimes entire lifetimes searching for. Here is what I want you to carry with you after this. Understanding women is not a destination you arrive at. It is not a set of tactics or a better script. It is the ongoing result of becoming someone who is genuinely present, genuinely honest with himself, and genuinely capable of meeting another person in their emotional reality instead of waiting for them to come meet you in yours. Most men never learn this, not because it is too complex, but because nobody ever told them it was their work to do. They were handed a model of relationship where emotional labor belonged to someone else, and showing up was enough. And that quiet assumption destroys more connections than almost any other single thing. The men who truly understand women understand something else first, that the depth of any relationship is limited by the depth they are willing to go inside themselves. And the moment you stop treating that inner work as optional is the moment everything starts to change. Not just with women, with yourself, with the quality of every relationship in your life. That is not a small thing. That is the whole thing. Now I want to hear from you. Think about the single thing in this video that felt most true to your own experience. The moment something clicked. The thing you recognized from your own life without having to be told. Drop it in the comments right now. Not because I need to know, but because the act of naming it out loud is the first step toward actually changing it. The comment section on this channel is full of people having real conversations about this stuff. Go be part of that. If this video shifted something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. There is probably a man in your life right now who is confused about a relationship and has no idea this is what is actually going on underneath the surface. One share could change something real for him. And if this is the kind of content that makes you think, subscribe and hit the bell. We release videos on human behavior, psychology, and the hidden dynamics behind why people connect the way they do every single week. You do not want to miss what is coming next. I am Elena Hart, and I will see you in the next one.